Welcome to this episode of Season 5 of the Prodcast, Google's podcast on site reliability engineering. My name is Jordan Greenberg, and I am here with my co-host, Florian. Say hi, Florian.
Hey, folks.
Long-term listeners may remember our guest today from Season 2, Life of an SRE, where she told us about her path into SRE. Now she's not an SRE anymore. Who are you, and what happened?
Hi, everybody. I'm Shannon from the G-Linux team here at Google. What happened is I'm still on the same team doing Linux at Google, but I just have a new job title. Essentially, our team structure changed, and so while my team aren't technically SREs anymore, we are still SREs very much at heart, and we are still driven by the same principles that are the backbone of SRE that we've always had.
And if you can remind us just a little bit about the G-Linux platform team and what that's like for you in your day-to-day, so our listeners have some context if they haven't listened to the last episode.
Of course. So Google actually has their own version of a Linux distribution called G-Linux. Previously, it was called Ubuntu, but we've switched from an Ubuntu-based distribution to Debian a few years ago. G-Linux is a kind of a combination of internal packages, our configurations, and things that are available on Debian upstream that a lot of Googlers and engineers use in their day-to-day work.
Thanks, Shannon. That's interesting context. So, as far as I'm aware, G-Linux is of course used on a bunch of devices that Googlers use in their day-to-day. And like your team is managing that in some description. So how do you manage a large fleet of devices efficiently? And also security presumably plays quite a big important role here. How do you keep them secure?
Well, it's no easy or small task, but the backbone is testing, canarying, and monitoring with a little bit of Puppet thrown in there.
You have birds and puppets?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
G-Linux sounds kind of cool.
It's awesome, actually. I think it's awesome. So essentially, our philosophy is that testing is super important because you want to catch as many issues as possible when you're testing a potential release rather than when users already start to experience these issues. Obviously, testing can't catch everything, but the second best option is to impact a small number of people who have opted into being testers of G-Linux and who might give you a heads up when something is failing. And so the best problem is a problem users never know about. The second best problem is a problem that the vast majority of your users will never know about.
So you're applying the classic SRE principles of like you shift left and you do like staged rollouts and whatnot. So
yep, we have that classic staged rollout philosophy for pushing new releases every week to our users. And so once something has hit testing and we're relatively sure that it's in a good state, then we canary it out slowly to the fleet using, of course, monitoring as a part of our rollouts to help prevent issues and then recognize them as soon as possible. Monitoring is super important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So presumably the kind of changes that you test in this way would be like if there's a new upstream kernel, things like that?
Yep. So that could be anything from a new kernel to a new package to anything really.
Even like a config change you make
yep. So it's everything from security tools to a kernel to just configuration changes that we want to push out to our users. Really, anything can go wrong, so we want to anticipate whatever can go wrong.
Okay, so you talked about the canaries, which are who have opted into testing unstable or beta builds, whatever you might call them. Can you tell us about the puppets? Everybody loves puppets.
Puppet is a really powerful tool that we use on G Linux, and it's used to enforce both configuration or just set defaults that our users can change on our fleet. Puppet is a configuration language, and the best thing about it is that it's very flexible, allowing us to target different configurations on our fleets or just subsets of it, because the G Linux user base is extremely diverse, and we have lots of different hardware and lots of different setups. And we want to make sure that the right people are having the right configurations.
That makes total sense, because if I have my config set up, I don't necessarily want to have it changed every week if some update happens. So,
oh, definitely
helpful.
Surely Linux users are among the most opinionated people you can find anywhere. So yeah, I'm sure that is super important.
Yeah, but that's a blessing as someone on the G Linux team.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about Googlers is that they're googly. And so we get a lot of really constructive feedback from our users about what doesn't work in their setup, so what they would like to see. And that can really help us drive innovation on our platform and really understand what we can do to make G Linux better for everybody.
Nice.
Win-win all around. That sounds great.
Oh, definitely.
So do you think then we have already passed the year of the Linux on the desktop/laptop, because that has been a thing at Google certainly for a while. So are we now in the year of Linux in the cloud?
No, I think in general, we are really in the year of Linux everything, and that's both at Google and outside of Google. I've been using Linux since I was a child, which makes sense because my dad was actually a Unix engineer, so it runs in the family. Mm-hmm. And it's been a really long time since my first Linux installation CD, and it's been just so amazing to see how over the years Linux has evolved and grown, and how every year, every change, it continues to get better and more user-friendly. And the fantastic thing about the year of the Linux everything is that we have a lot of Linux users that don't even know they're Linux users.
Yes.
So did you know that things like the Steam Deck or Chromebooks are actually powered by Linux? So they are Linux at their core.
Absolutely. I think this is so special for people to learn and understand. Like, Linux used to be kind of scary, and you used to set your friend into a bad time by telling them, hey, you should try installing Arch, right? Now, instead of it being like year of the desktop, I think year of the Linux everything does apply. Form factors for things have changed. So, example, mini PCs are coming out. They're like this big. Steam just made an announcement about their new hardware lineup. Definitely will be running on Linux.
Oh, I did hear about that.
Yes. So, and that just makes Linux approachable for people, and hopefully they can realize that it's the coat of paint that they put over a powerful operating system is actually something that's really helpful in their day-to-day.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget, in fact, about the huge fleet of mobile devices running Linux under the hood in form of Android, which is still runs the Linux kernel, even though the rest is maybe not as recognizable as a Linux system anymore. But
absolutely,
if we take that into account, we are certainly in the year of Linux everywhere, which is great.
That is also the beauty of Linux, is that, some people may not be ready for Arch or Gentoo, and that's okay. And other people, that is exactly the kind of customization that they want, that drives them. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of Linux is that it can be anything for anyone. That if you want something, make it. That for the most part, open source code is just forkable. If you want to make your own Ubuntu flavor, go for it.
Absolutely. you want to have your home server so that you can share your pictures to grandma, or if you want to have it so that you can host your team's D&D session in your own Foundry instance or something like that, do it, because Linux is easy. It is made for you.
Yeah, it's made for everybody.
And now, post Linux commercial break, I kind of have a question to you about how AI has impacted your work or device requirements, because it's not like we're going to be running Steam Deck in a corporate, right?
Yeah,
so
that would be nice, though.
It would be nice. How has the work or the requirements for devices changed in the age of AI, and how does the way that you secure them change?
Users having computers that enabled them to do their best work and have all of the different hardware requirements that they need has been something that my team has been involved in for a long time, even before the rise of AI. AI engineers who are working in these fields definitely have unique hardware requirements and unique software requirements in order to be able to effectively do their jobs. And who better to help us understand those needs than the people who work with those engineers every day? So when we're looking into choosing a device or seeing what's going to work on Linux, on G Linux, we talk to people at DeepMind. We talk to people who are going to be using these devices and say, hey, what do you need? What is going to enable you to do your best work? Additionally, something that we look for is choosing a device that is very flexible. So choosing a device that is inherently very flexible allows us to have a base unit that we could build on, and that we have a good base unit of specs that will, by and large, cover most of our users, but with the flexibility of changing things for specific teams or specific needs, including our AI engineers.
Speaking of AI, maybe in a slightly different context, if you want to tell us about your own experience, like what would you call the single most important use of AI in your sort of day-to-day SRE work?
Well, that's a very hard question. In my opinion, AI is really such a powerful and multifaceted tool, and there isn't one single most important use of it. Different teams and even different individual engineers will find different things useful. Like something that I need to do very frequently is analyzing signals and analyzing exported logs from our internal fleet. Naturally, these are logged to different databases and they're structured in entirely different ways. And in order to be able to detect issues and determine the impact of our users, we really need to put all of these signals together in an easy to use way. And AI allows us to be able to more quickly and easily build queries that we need across all of these different sources to get the answers that we need and respond to potential problems. Because the last thing you want to do when there's an outage is be messing around with an SQL query trying to get your join correct, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But presumably you don't want to give sort of all that control to the AI. Do you see any risks that AI may pose in the context of decision making in SRE?
Of course. The biggest risk for AI in this context is having an over-reliance on what it's telling us. And that can be an over-reliance on the queries it makes, the alerts it's flagging to us, and the recommendations for potential workarounds that it's giving. AI won't always be correct, and it's up to us as engineers to ensure that we're checking our results and we're maintaining the institutional knowledge of our teams and our products in order to be able to correctly interpret what we're seeing from the AI. AI is at its most powerful and most useful when it's used by a skilled engineer as a part of their toolkit, not as the whole toolkit.
Yeah, that is very good advice.
Very smart. And just so we touch on it briefly too, the tasks that SREs need to do are pretty similar to tasks that people in other fields might need to do too. So example, like we use AI in my team for data formatting and building out spreadsheets. You know, all of these things can be leveraged or leverage AI to make them a little bit more efficiently done and take some of the burden off of us. I did want to switch gears a little bit just because I was thinking about your title change and how, you know, SREs, they have a few different identities or hats, we might call them, that they may wear. What would you say is the hat that you wear most frequently in your current role? And do you think that it's best if an SRE is very specific or if they're able to adapt and context switch and wear a different hat one day? What kind of mix do you think is effective?
I think a lot of people end up wearing multiple hats over the course of their career. That's not something that's unique to SRE. And, you know, being able to grow in your role and grow as an engineer frequently means changing out your hats. Mm-hmm. And the best part about that is that when you get a new hat, you don't just throw away the old one. It's still there for when you need it. It's still there, kind of as an old reliable. I'm wearing mostly the systems engineer's hat. So a lot of what I do is way more Linux focused than coding focused. But I've also had other hats. So, for example, I used to work in tech support, and that was a hat I wore for a long time.
Yeah. And like there's different flavors of that too. There's software engineering, systems administration, systems engineering, like you were saying. And we also, you know, just had Jess on, security SRE. So we know that there are very strange types of SREs. And in concert, we work together to make such a beautiful situation happen.
Oh, definitely.
So in the context of that, what is a typical week looking like for you, you know, outside of an on-call?
A typical day or a typical week is different, you know, week by week for me. But overall, I work tons with our internal partners, especially with our support staff, to really make sure that they're both able to give the best support possible to our internal Linux users, but also to hear their feedback so that we can know and we can listen to what they're telling us about what they're seeing, what our users are seeing, that we may have not otherwise known about. Right. It comes back to the mantra of not everything is caught in testing.
Right. Exactly.
Outside of, you know, working with our internal partners and being a people person, I'm pretty involved in working on improving and maintaining the testing infrastructure that G-Linux has. G-Linux does weekly releases, as we've kind of touched on before, and that includes new and updated packages from Debian, internal packages from Google, configurations, et cetera, et cetera. And so having a reliable test infrastructure is really super important because it allows us to have more confidence in the release. Having unreliable tests and having unreliable infrastructure means that not only does an engineer need to potentially spend more time investigating a failure, but it also creates a kind of alert fatigue. And that could lead us to easily mistaking a real failure for just another flaky test. Because, you know, the first 10 times, it could have just been, it wasn't really a failure. And then you'll pass it and, oh my God, all of our machines are broken.
Yeah, let's avoid that if we can.
Yeah. That is all like super important work. But I'm presuming that some companies or like someone might argue that like, hey, we don't need to hire SREs for this job. So in your opinion, like what is or when is the right time to add SREs to your company? And like what might influence someone to hire an SRE or put someone in a similar job function like yourself?
The right time is going to be different for every company. For some companies, it's going to be best to bring an SRE from the ground up. And for others, it's going to be the right time to bring in an SRE when the company really starts to scale up or starts introducing more complexity into their operations. I think having SRE roles, or at the very least, practicing SRE fundamentals like monitoring, disaster and resilience testing, incident response from the very beginning can really set companies up for success, whether or not they have the SRE job title officially or not. Stability and reliability go hand in hand with development and innovation.
That's a great way to put it. Some people don't know that they're SREs, and some people don't have the title of SRE. But hopefully, hearing from you, they know that their work is exactly what an SRE does.
I wouldn't get too hung up on the title. You know, it's just another hat that they're wearing. Anybody can be an SRE if they're engineering like an SRE. When you follow these best practices, when you follow these SRE principles, it doesn't really matter if your job title is DevOps or SysEnd or sys administration or IT support. You are practicing SRE fundamentals. You're practicing as an SRE.
Love that.
Exactly. Yeah, you can be the SRE at heart even if you don't have that job title.
Yep, proof of that.
Totally. So one thing that we've noticed over the last years is that we've increasingly been using like services more online rather than like on our devices and whatnot. Like, do you think that as sort of society in general, do you think we should depend on online services more or less, or is it fine the way it is today? What do you think?
Both of those things can be true in different ways. There are lots of everyday services that really do, and many that would actually benefit from digitalization and from increased connectivity. You know, lots of people lead very busy lives, and being able to interact with the services that they need on their own schedule from their own house is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the same time, it's really important to think about the digital divide here and people's personal preferences as well. We need to ensure that the people that may not regularly use or have consistent access to the internet can still get what they need to have done, and also have a good experience without needing the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, it's super important when designing connected products to also think about the offline experience. So, will it still work and function without the internet? And how would I use this product if it was never connected to the internet in the first place?
Really good point. I appreciate this so much, Shannon. You're helping us think about SRE in the ways that only a person who works with the platform and thinks about things so holistically from the user perspective, from the hardware perspective, from the supplier perspective, the reliability perspective, molded into one can tell us. So thank you again for being an iconic guest. And that's it for this episode of the Prodcast. Thank you to our listeners for hanging on with us, and we'll be back with some more soon. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. That was great.